In the dark corners of every great civilization, there has always lived a figure cloaked in shadow and secret knowledge, the magician. He is the one who knows what others do not, who walks between worlds, who can turn lead into gold and madness into wisdom. He is Merlin. He is Faust. He is the silent wizard at the edge of the village whose name is whispered with reverence and fear. And though we like to believe that we have outgrown him in our age of science and reason, the magician has never left us. He lives within us still, hidden in the depths of the unconscious, waiting to be remembered. To understand him is to understand the most mysterious power that the human psyche possesses, the power of transformation itself. The magician is the most enigmatic of all archetypes. He has haunted the human imagination since the earliest cave paintings, appearing again and again throughout myth, religion, literature, and modern cinema. He is the wise old man on the mountaintop, the hermit in the forest, the seer who speaks in riddles, the alchemist bent over his furnace, the analyst sitting silently as the patient unburdens his soul. He is, as the English visionary poet William Blake described, the one who possesses fourfold vision, the capacity to see eternity in an hour, infinity in a grain of sand, heaven in a wildflower. The magician beholds what others cannot. He has crossed the threshold between the visible and the invisible, between the world of matter and the world of spirit. And he is returned bearing knowledge that the ordinary man has neither the courage nor the patience to seek for himself. In the great myths and legends of antiquity, the magician serves as guide and mentor, not merely to the hero, but to the king himself. When the ruler was overtaken by rage or pride or melancholy, when his judgment faltered and his throne trembled. It was the court magician who restored him to reason. The magician, in effect, was the king's psychotherapist. He spoke truth to power when no one else dared. He held up the mirror of the soul before the eyes of the mighty and reminded them that they too were mortal, that they too were subject to the laws of the deeper order. Those rulers who refused his counsel descended into tyranny, and their empires crumbled into dust. The magician's wisdom, when ignored, becomes the very prophecy of ruin. We still see him today in the figures of our modern mythology. Gandalf walks beside Frodo and counsels Aragorn. Dumbledore watches over Harry Potter from the towers of Hogwarts. Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi shape the destiny of Luke Skywalker in the far reaches of the galaxy. These are not arbitrary inventions of the modern imagination. They are reincarnations of an ancient form, the same archetype that has appeared in every culture across every age. The young hero, at the beginning of his journey, always encounters the magician. He bestows upon him the sword, the wand, the knowledge, the secret name. He gives him the means to confront the dragon. Without the magician, the hero would never mature. He would remain a frightened child, lost in the dark woods of his own ignorance. The magician is the initiate of secret and hidden knowledge of all kinds. All knowledge that takes special training to acquire is the province of the magician energy. Of all the magicians who have ever lived in the mind of mankind, perhaps none looms larger than Merlin, the sage of the Arthurian legend, the prophet, the kingmaker, the shapeshifter. He was, according to the medieval tradition, conceived of an incubus and born of an innocent virgin, a child of both the terrestrial and the supernatural, a being who held in himself the union of opposites. He was meant, in some versions of the tale, to be the Antichrist, sent to reverse the effect of Christ's harrowing of hell. But the light of his mother triumphed over the darkness of his father, and Merlin became instead the embodiment of the whole man, the self, a figure in whom light and shadow are reconciled. He told the king that beneath the foundations of his collapsing tower, a red dragon and a white dragon were locked in eternal combat. This is the gift of the magician, to perceive what others only dimly feel, to diagnose the hidden conflict beneath the visible ruin. This is why the magician is so often a disturbing figure. He is not safe. He is not entirely good. He carries within him the original ambiguity of nature itself. Jung wrote of him, "The magician has preserved in himself a trace of primitive paganism. He possesses a nature that is still unaffected by the Christian dichotomy and is in touch with the still pagan unconscious, where the opposites lie side by side in their original naive state, beyond the reach of sinfulness but liable, if assimilated, into conscious life, to beget evil as well as good with the same daemonic energy. Therefore, he is a destroyer as well as a savior." This figure is therefore preeminently suited to become the symbol carrier for an attempt at unification. This is the deepest secret of the magician archetype. He is not a force of pure light. He is a force of wholeness, and wholeness, by definition, includes the darkness. The man who cannot accept this will never become a true magician. He will remain a moralist, a fundamentalist, a child playing at being holy. Before Merlin entered the Arthurian cycle, he existed in the older Welsh tradition as Myrddin the Wild, the bard who went mad after a great battle and fled into the forest to live as a wild man among the beasts. The Roman invasion of Britain had crushed the Druids, and the old pagan knowledge was driven underground. Myrddin became a symbol of that lost wisdom, crying out from the depths of the forest in a language no one could any longer understand. This is the tragic dimension of the magician. He is the keeper of a knowledge that the world has forgotten, and his voice grows fainter with each passing generation. Yet it never disappears entirely. The forest still murmurs his cries. The unconscious still speaks his name in our dreams. Alongside Merlin stands the other great magician of Western civilization, Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom, writing, and magic, who in time became syncretized with Hermes, the Greek messenger and psychopomp. Their union produced Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great sage to whom were attributed the Emerald Tablet and the vast body of writings known as the Hermetica. The Hermetic tradition was concerned with astrology, medicine, botany, alchemy, and the deepest mystical teachings, the secret correspondence between the cosmos above and the soul below. Magic, throughout history, has been the shadow of religion. It is what religion suppresses, what it casts out, what it labels heresy. The witch hunts of early modern Europe burned thousands of women and men whose only crime was that they remembered something older than the church. And yet, as Marie-Louise von Franz observed, magic is probably one of the oldest of man's spiritual activities. Whenever a new conscious attitude arises, the old knowledge, the previous attitude, sinks on to the level of magic. Magic is therefore the older form of spiritual and religious knowledge and activity which has been superseded by a new spiritual religious attitude, and therefore has sunk back into a more unconscious condition. Astrology, once the queen of the sciences, became astronomy. Alchemy, once the mother of wisdom, became chemistry, and, according to Jung, the forerunner of our modern depth psychology. Magic, then, is not the opposite of science, but its mother. The oldest forms of magic were the fertility rituals, the rites by which our ancestors sought to ensure the abundance of crops and the fertility of women. These worked through the principle of sympathetic magic, the doctrine that like affects like, that one may influence a thing by acting upon its image. The Paleolithic cave paintings were almost certainly not mere decoration. They were acts of consecration. The Sorcerer of Trois Frères, painted on a cave wall in France some 15,000 years ago, is perhaps the oldest depiction of the magician archetype known to humankind, a half-human, half-animal figure who seems to be the master of beasts and the keeper of the sacred order of the hunt. In ancient Mesopotamia, The magicians were called the Aipu. They were healers, scholars, priests, and counselors to kings. The Sumerian god Enki was their patron, the source of all hidden knowledge. In Egypt, magic itself was deified as the god Heka, and the central principle of Egyptian magic was the creative power of the spoken word. To name a thing was to call it into being. This is the same principle that underlies the magical word abracadabra, which some have translated as "I will create as I speak." It is the same principle that opens the book of Genesis. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. The word, in the magical worldview, is not a description of reality. It is the act of creation itself. Even our modern hocus pocus may descend from the Latin of the mass, hoc est corpus, this is the body. The sacred word has never left us, we have only forgotten that we are speaking it. For the Egyptians, magic permeated every stage of existence, birth, life, death, and the long journey of the afterlife. The deceased soul faced the weighing of the heart, in which the heart of the dead was placed upon a scale against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth. Those whose hearts were heavy with deceit and cruelty were devoured by the demon Amit. Those whose hearts balanced the feather began the long and arduous passage to Aru, the field of reeds, paradise in Egyptian mythology. Along this journey, the soul faced countless trials and dangers, and the magical spells were believed to provide its only protection. These spells were collected in what we now call the Egyptian Book of the Dead, a grimoire for the soul, a magical guidebook for the most uncertain journey any human being ever undertakes. Throughout history, the magician has guarded his secrets in such great tomes. The Picatrix, written in the 10th or 11th century, drew together the Hermetic and Neoplatonic traditions. The Key of Solomon laid out the rituals for invoking spirits and consecrating magical tools. In biblical canon, King Solomon was renowned for wisdom in the apocryphal traditions. He was also a master magician who, by means of his sacred seal, commanded demons to build his temple. In the modern imagination, the most famous grimoire of all is the fictional Necronomicon of H.P. Lovecraft, the dread book of the mad Arab Abdul al-Hazred, containing the unspeakable knowledge of the great old ones. Lovecraft's characters are destroyed by their pursuit of forbidden wisdom. And in this, we see one of the oldest warnings of the magical tradition. There are no shortcuts to enlightenment. The man who seeks the secret without first preparing himself to bear it will be consumed by it. This warning is captured most perfectly in the archetype of the sorcerer's apprentice. The young apprentice, in his master's absence, enchants a broom to do his chores for him. The broom begins to carry water again and again until the workshop is flooded. He chops the broom in two, and now there are 2 brooms, then 4, then a multitude. The spirits that I summoned, go to rote, I now cannot rid myself of again. This is the perfect parable of our age. The archetype of the sorcerer's apprentice portrays the zeitgeist of the 21st century, nuclear energy, genetic engineering, cloning, virtual reality, artificial intelligence. We are entering a posthuman era, posing new existential challenges to the human condition. We have built a system that we cannot live without, and yet within which the individual can be done away with. Our technological inventions are becoming extensions and replacements of our muscles, our nervous systems, our brains, our eyes and ears, even our reproductive organs, to such an extent that the boundary between biology and the machine has all but disappeared. Materialistic science, in its effort to gain knowledge about the world of matter and to control it, has engendered a monster that threatens the very survival of human existence. The excessive demands of modern life, the alienation from the body, from other people, and from nature have engendered in many a consuming need to escape into pleasure and oblivion. We have summoned the brooms, and we do not know the spell that sends them back. The integration of the magician archetype is essential if we are ever to tackle these problems. In the Renaissance, the figure of the magician reached one of its highest expressions. The German alchemist Johann Georg Faust grew weary of human knowledge and made his pact with the devil in exchange for magical power. Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, in his 3 books of occult philosophy, sought to redeem magic by binding it to religion. Paracelsus fused medicine with magic and inaugurated a revolution in healing. John Dee, the English mathematician and astrologer, served as advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, and together with the scryer Edward Kelly, claimed to have received the Enochian language directly from the angels. Nicolas Flamel, the French scribe, was said to have discovered the philosopher's stone and attained immortality. The 12 keys of Basil Valentine described the alchemical stages by which base metals and base souls might be transmuted into gold. Mercury, the alchemical god, was the figure of wholeness who stood at the beginning and the end of the great work. Jung wrote of him, Mercurius stands at the beginning and end of the work. He is metallic yet liquid, matter yet spirit, cold yet fiery, poison and yet healing draught, a symbol uniting all the opposites. Within the tradition itself, the magician has worn many faces. The magician is the general name for one who practices magic. The wizard is the wise old man who has studied the magical arts over a long lifetime. The sorcerer possesses an innate gift or has gained his power through pacts with supernatural entities, the dark cousin of the wizard, often associated with witchcraft and voodoo. The enchanter casts spells through magical objects, charms, and talismans. The necromancer communicates with the dead, summoning their spirits to foretell the future or uncover hidden knowledge. And then there are the older, deeper figures, the druids of ancient Celtic Britain, philosophers of the immortality of the soul and the transmigration of souls, the Gnostics and mystics, who sought direct experience of the divine through meditation, prayer, and ritual, and the shaman, who, as Mircea Eliade put it, is the technician of the sacred. The shaman is the figure from which all of this descends, the medicine man, the dream walker, the one whose calling begins in a great illness, and whose healing of himself becomes the foundation of his power to heal others. Von Franz wrote that the roots of both priesthood and psychotherapy lie in the primitive phenomenon of shamanism and the existence of medicine men. The analytical psychologist in this sense is the modern shaman. He seeks to heal the patient by teaching him to listen to his own dreams, to bring the unconscious into consciousness, to journey towards the self. The self is represented by the mandala, the magic circle that appears in every culture, the symbol of wholeness and balance that arises spontaneously in the psyche when chaos threatens to overwhelm it. The tradition has always distinguished between low magic and high magic, the goetic and the theurgic. It has also distinguished between white and black. The white magician uses his knowledge in the service of love and of the divine order. He does not see himself as the source of power, but as a conduit. The black magician inverts this. He uses his knowledge for personal gain, to dominate, to manipulate, to inflate his own ego. Jung wrote, "Magic exercises a compulsion that prevails over the conscious mind and will of the victim. An alien will rises up in the bewitched and proves stronger than his ego." The only comparable effect capable of psychological verification is that exerted by unconscious contents, which by their compelling power demonstrate their affinity with or dependence on man's totality. Magic, in its dark form, is the invasion of the soul by a power not its own. And this is why, the moment magic is used selfishly, it has crossed the threshold into shadow. Here we come to the shadow magician who lives within every one of us. He is the manipulator. He is the one who withholds what he knows in order to maintain power over others. He is the one who uses his cleverness as a weapon, who belittles others to bolster his own status. He is also the one who falls into what Jung called inflation, the identification of the ego with the archetype itself. He becomes the charlatan, the false prophet, the cult leader. This is the Asclepius complex, the healer who has come to believe that he himself is the source of healing. It is the oldest and most subtle of spiritual diseases, and it has destroyed more magicians than any external enemy. As Lord Acton stated, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The magician is also bound to the figure of the trickster. Mercury and Hermes were both gods of magicians and of thieves. In his shadow form, the trickster becomes the illusionist of modern consumer culture, selling overnight success, the magic pill, the path without the work. But in his light form, he reveals an essential truth. He makes objects disappear to remind us that all objects are appearances. Behind the 10,000 things, the Hindu sages tell us, all is one. This is the veil of Maya, the cosmic illusion that the phenomenal world is real. All of creation is the Leela of the Supreme Being, the divine play whose purpose is to remind us that the Atman within us is identical to the Brahman that contains the universe. The magician is also the guardian of what Jung called the archetype of the miracle, the archetype of the magic effect. All true miracles, all moments of synchronicity, all parapsychological events seem to share one quality in common, an attitude of hopeful expectancy on the part of those who participate in them. The founders of the great religions always performed miracles, but it is significant that Jesus said to those he healed, "Your faith has healed you." The miracle is never the sole act of the magician. It is the meeting of his vision with the receptivity of the soul that stands before him. The magician gives us unexpected glimpses of the transcendent world. He suspends, for a moment, the iron chain of cause and effect, and reminds us that reality is far stranger and more luminous than the rational mind permits us to see. In the tarot, the magician is the first card of the major arcana, number 1, immediately after the Fool. In the older Marseille deck, he appears as a juggler in the motley of the court jester, his hat brim forming the symbol of infinity. In the Rider-Waite deck, he becomes a priest, the symbol of infinity now floating openly above his head, one hand pointing to the sky and the other to the earth. As above, so below. He stands at the threshold where heaven and earth meet, where the eternal pours itself into the temporal. In Kabbalah, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph, symbolizes the oneness of God, the source from which all multiplicity proceeds, and to which all multiplicity, in the end, returns. In his Red Book, Jung described his own encounter with the magician within. He met Philemon, his inner wise old man, his daemon, his teacher. When Jung asked him what magic was, Philemon replied that magic is precisely everything that eludes comprehension. The practice of magic, Jung wrote, consists in making what is not understood understandable in an incomprehensible manner. Magic will never be lost to humanity, because it is reborn with each and every one of us. To awaken the magician within is to begin the work of individuation, the slow, lifelong process by which the scattered fragments of the soul are gathered into wholeness. The magician is the one who has learned that magic is often as simple as prayer. He asks for what is needed: health, forgiveness, transformation, and as long as it is reasonable and within the humanly possible. The answer comes from the wisdom of a power greater than his own. Hence the words of the Gospel of Matthew, "Ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened to you." The number 7, the most repeated number in the Bible, is the symbol of completion and divine fullness. The day on which God rested from his work and blessed it. The magician's path is not the path of effortful striving alone. It is the path of asking, listening, and receiving. All of the great inventions and wonders of the world first existed as images in the unconscious. As we paid attention to them, we brought them into consciousness and solidified them into the external world. The magician brings the realm of fantasy and imagination into reality. By visualizing it, he creates it. To some extent, thoughts shape reality, and belief is not trivial. The mind can even heal sickness, as is seen in placebo-controlled studies. But the modern doctrine of the so-called law of attraction, which insists that positive thoughts bring positive results and negative thoughts bring negative outcomes, is psychologically far too one-sided. We cannot impose our will on reality. We must surrender to both the positive and the negative, for both must coexist. That is the fundamental reality of the human condition. It is the synthesis of opposites, not the repression of darkness, that brings about the fullness of being. Positive thinking should never be used to avoid responsibility for the harm we do to ourselves and to others. When we do harm, we must ask for forgiveness and we must make amends. Much of our inner negativity results from repression. The issue is not to get rid of it, but to transform it, to allow it to resurface, to be acknowledged, and to take on a new form. When we are in a state of what the alchemists called massa confusa, the inner chaos of unintegrated contents, we can delve into the eternal guide within and clear up the conflicting urges. We can learn to feel our feelings fully, to talk through our pain and our anger, to emerge on the other side more intimate and more alive than before. This is the talking cure, the modern shaman's craft. This is psychoanalysis as a magical art. The magician does not invent the self. He removes the obstacles that have hidden it. As the old sculptors said, they did not create their figures, they simply chiseled away the superfluous material so that the image already implicit in the marble could stand free. The gold is already present in the lead, the figure is already present in the stone. The wholeness is already present in the chaos. What you are seeking has been seeking you since before you were born. The magician understands the deepest law of the spiritual cosmos, that the inner and the outer are not separate. What Jung called the unus mundus, the one world, is the recognition that the order of the psyche and the order of the universe are reflections of one another. As above, so below. The Hindu doctrine of Indra's net teaches this, the infinite cosmic web in which every jewel reflects every other jewel, and the whole reflects every part. The shamans of every continent teach this, that all living beings are connected in a vast web of energy, the anima mundi, the soul of the world. The peace you cultivate within yourself becomes the peace you carry into the world. The chaos you tolerate within yourself becomes the chaos you project upon others. This is why the golden rule appears in nearly every spiritual tradition. In the Mahabharata it is written that one should never do to another what one regards as injurious to oneself. This, in brief, is the rule of Dharma. Marcus Aurelius wrote that what injures the hive injures the bee. Newton told us that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The magician is the one who has understood that this is not merely physics. It is the deepest law of the soul. And so the final secret of the magician is this, that the greatest magic is not the manipulation of matter, but the transformation of consciousness. The magician does not seek to bend the world to his will. He seeks to bend his will to the deeper order of the world. He has learned that the true philosopher's stone is not a stone at all, but a state of being, a state in which the opposites are reconciled, in which the gold of the soul has been recovered from the lead of the unconscious, in which the human being has at last become what he was always meant to be. Whole, awake, free to integrate the magician is to discover that you have always been more than you believed, that the world is more than it appears, that behind every grain of sand there sleeps a universe, and behind every passing hour there waits an eternity. The magician is not somewhere out there, in a tower, in a forest, in a story. He is here. He is you. He has been waiting, in the silence beneath your thoughts, for you to remember. And as Blake wrote in his prophetic vision, if the spectator could enter into these images in his imagination, approaching them on the fiery chariot of his contemplative thought, if he could make a friend and a companion of one of these images of wonder, then would he arise from his grave. Then would he meet the Lord in the air. And then he would be happy.